Imagine this. You're suddenly called on in a meeting, your boss asks for your opinion, and dozens of eyes are staring at you. Your mind, completely blank, heart racing, words trapped. What if? Instead of freezing, you could speak with confidence, clarity, and power on the spot. That's exactly what Matt Abrahams reveals in Think Faster, Talk Smarter. In this audiobook, you'll discover how to transform panic into poise and silence into impact. Ready to learn how to turn every unexpected moment into your best performance. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Hi, all, and welcome to Book Podcast Zone. I'm Emma, and I am so ready to dive headfirst into the magic, the politics, and honestly, the huge character journey we've got lined up today.
And I'm John. I'm really looking forward to getting into this. We're going to dissect some really essential frameworks today, things that can turn spontaneous speaking from, a scary thing into a real asset for your career.
Yeah, good to be here. Today we're really undertaking a deep dive into the blueprint for communication mastery that Matt Abrahams lays out. Our focus is going to be extracting the strategic, actionable intelligence from the sources our listeners shared, specifically zeroing in on those chapter-by-chapter insights from Think Faster, Talk Smarter. Welcome to Book Podcast Zone. Our mission today is, it's pretty clear. We want to shortcut your process for mastering those off-the-cuff moments. We're aiming to go way beyond the usual advice like, just take a deep breath. We're diving into the foundational mindset shifts and the, frankly, quite rigid structures that let your brain organize complex thoughts really, really fast.
That's exactly right. We're not just summarizing the book here. Our goal is to deliver the core mechanisms, the how-to, that really facilitate immediate clarity when you're put on the spot. And Chapter 1 really sets that indispensable foundation. It states pretty unequivocally that quick thinking isn't some innate talent only a few lucky people have. It's a skill. It's like a muscle, really, that anyone can train and improve.
Yeah, I think that's honestly the biggest draw of this material for so many people. That fear, that dread of spontaneous communication, it's almost universal, isn't it? That feeling when the spotlight suddenly swings to you. But Abrahams, right from the start, frames it as a high-stakes opportunity. Mastering the skill, he argues, transforms those moments of sheer terror exposure into strategic platforms.
Yeah.
Platforms for making an impact, for showing leadership.
It is a profound shift in perspective, absolutely. The realization that you don't have to be a victim of the situation. You can control the moment, even when you don't have pages of meticulously pre-written notes in front of you. So we're going to be zeroing in on the practical, how the cognitive tools, the structural scaffolding that makes this kind of high-speed, high-quality communication actually possible. And we really have to start where Abraham starts, with that internal battle, the fight against anxiety.
Okay, so that takes us straight into Chapter 2, which is very appropriately called Mindset Matters. And this section, it tackles the physical reality of speaking under pressure, doesn't it? The racing heart, the adrenaline surge, that awful feeling that your brain is just being hijacked by panic. Abrahams positions this as the very first and maybe the most critical emotional pivot point, shifting from that internal panic to external poise.
Right. And most people honestly fail in spontaneous speaking situations before they even open their mouths. Why? Because they try to suppress their body's natural response. They focus all their energy on trying to calm down. But that effort usually just backfires. It translates into this internal struggle, which then adds another layer of anxiety about their performance.
That's what makes it worse, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the book offers this technique called cognitive reappraisal. It's essentially about reframing that feeling of anxiety as excitement.
Okay, let's really unpack this because it sounds maybe a little simplistic at first glance. Just telling yourself, be excited when you feel genuinely terrified. It sounds like, mental gymnastics. How does this actually work on a neurological level, and why does it actually impact our performance?
It's a great question, and it's grounded in some really solid insights from modern performance psychology. There are studies, especially some that have really gained traction around, say, the 2025 timeframe, focusing on cognitive load under high stress. And they demonstrate that the bodily response, the physiological signature of intense anxiety and intense excitement, they're almost identical.
Really? So heart rate, adrenaline, all that?
Precisely. We're talking about high heart rate variability, maybe some peripheral vasoconstriction, cold hands, anyone. And that initial spike in cortisol and adrenaline, your body is physically jacked up. It's in a state of high arousal, high readiness. The physical feeling is basically the same.
So the energy itself is neutral. The difference is purely in the label, the interpretation we put on it.
Exactly right. Think about it. If we label that surge anxiety, our prefrontal cortex, that's the part of the brain doing the heavy lifting for complex thought, planning, structure, memory retrieval. it gets completely overwhelmed by the amygdala. The amygdala flags the situation as a threat.
The danger signal.
The danger signal, yeah. And what happens then? Cognitive functions basically shut down. That's where the mind going blank feeling comes from. We default to our primal fight or flight response, which for speaking usually means we either freeze up entirely or we start stammering, rambling aimlessly.
Okay, but then the flip side, if we consciously, intentionally label that same physical energy excitement or maybe readiness for an opportunity.
Then we essentially bypass the amygdala's threat hijack. We're sending a different message to our brain. We're saying, hey, this energy, this isn't a risk, it's a resource. Use it.
Ah, so you're not trying to get rid of the energy, you're trying to harness it.
Exactly. You harness that nervous energy. Instead of fighting against that state of high arousal, which is exhausting, you actually utilize it. It fuels the clarity, the speed, even the passion in your communication. You're trading that fear-induced stuttering or freezing for, well, excitement-driven momentum.
Okay, that makes sense neurologically, but here's the practical challenge, and I bet a lot of listeners feel this too. In the heat of the moment, right? I get called out unexpectedly in that big meeting. Let's use that example you mentioned. Say I'm a technical lead at a high-pressure aerospace company up in Seattle. The VP suddenly asks me a tough question about why a key component failed testing. My heart is pounding. How do I actually execute that conscious relabeling when my instinct is just pure panic, just freeze? Is there a micro technique, something that buys me that critical half second?
Yes, and this is where Abraham subtly integrates the idea of physical anchors. You need something physical, an action that's almost instantaneous, automatic, practiced. And honestly, the most effective technique often boils down to a brief, intentional anchor breath. But not just any breath specifically, slowing down the exhale.
Slowing the exhale. Why that specifically?
Because a slightly longer exhale has a physiological effect. It stimulates the vagus nerve, which helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, that's the body's rest and digest system, the counterbalance to fight or flight. It doesn't eliminate the arousal, but it takes the edge off the panic. So this brief physical action, maybe just a 2-second pause where you draw a slightly deeper breath in and then exhale fully and slowly, that gives you a cognitive pause.
Ah, okay. So the physical pause creates a mental window.
Precisely. That physical pause is your window for the reappraisal. You take that slow exhale and internally you deploy the script. I am not afraid. I am ready. Or this energy is excitement. Whatever phrase works for you, that small intentional act of internal management, combining the physical and the mental, provides just enough composure to transition smoothly into the next stage, which is applying some kind of structure to your thoughts.
Okay, so it's not just a vague philosophy of think positive. It's a tangible, almost a two-step microprocess. Step 1, execute a physical anchor, like that slow exhale. Step 2, immediately execute the cognitive reappraisal. Relabel the arousal from anxiety to excitement or readiness. If you can nail that combo in the first second or two.
You've effectively stopped the internal panic loop, you've intercepted the hijack signal, and you've begun the process of converting that potentially hostile energy into focused, usable power for communication.
That makes the foundation feel much more concrete, much more actionable.
It has to be, because without achieving that basic internal stability first, any fancy framework or structure we discuss next, well, it's likely to just shatter under the pressure. This mindset piece, this reframing, it really is the absolute prerequisite for organizing your thoughts quickly and effectively when the heat is on.
That distinction is huge, isn't it? The difference between fighting against your anxiety versus actively harnessing its underlying energy, that feels like the core insight, the real foundational realization of this chapter. It's powerful stuff. And speaking of powerful insights, before I move on to the next crucial step, how to actually organize those newly energized thoughts, let's just take a quick moment. We want to make sure you don't miss any of our future deep dives, exploring more techniques like these. We really appreciate your support, so please like, subscribe, and share for more update.
Okay, so we've tackled the internal state. We've hopefully shifted from panic to a state of readiness, harnessing that energy.
Right. The mind is stabilized, hopefully feeling more like excitement than dread. Now we have the necessary mental bandwidth, that cognitive space, to apply the scaffolding that Chapter 3 provides, structuring your thoughts. And this, I think, is where people feel a huge sense of relief, realizing you don't need to magically invent a perfectly polished presentation out of thin air on the spot. You just need to slot your ideas into a ready-made template. It's the remedy for that feeling of mental chaos.
Absolutely. Arguably the greatest challenge in spontaneous communication isn't necessarily generating ideas often. The ideas are there somewhere. The bottleneck is organizing them quickly enough to sound coherent. Without some kind of framework, you create massive cognitive friction. Your brain stalls, trying desperately to figure out, okay, where do I start? What comes next? How do I end this thing?
Yeah, the rambling effect.
Exactly. So Abrahams offers several useful templates in the book, but the sources we looked at really emphasize the incredible versatility and, frankly, the beautiful simplicity of the what, so, what, now, what structure.
It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? What, so what, now what? But when you break it down, it forces clarity and, crucially, direction.
Let's spend some time on the mechanics here. Why is this specific three-part structure so effective at cutting through that cognitive friction?
Well, at its core, the structure cleverly mimics the natural narrative arc required for most persuasive or informative communication. You need context, then meaning or relevance, and finally some kind of action or conclusion. So the what has to come first. It's the anchor. It's the immediate, precise statement of the topic, the key fact, core observation you want to address. It forces you, right at the outset, to define the boundaries of your response. And that simple act saves a ton of mental energy that would otherwise be wasted just wandering around the topic.
Okay, defines the subject, sharp and clear. Then the so too bad. This feels like the bridge from just stating a fact to making it actually matter to the listener. Precisely. It transitions from fact to relevance. This is where the argument, the interpretation, the implication lives. It directly answers that fundamental question, buzzing in the listener's mind. Okay, interesting fact, but why should I care about this specific detail right here, right now? It elevates the what from mere data into something with weight, with impact. If you skip the so what, you've often just delivered a piece of trivia that doesn't land.
Yeah, it falls flat. Okay, and then the final piece, the now what? This provides the closure, right?
Yeah.
The forward momentum.
Exactly. It's the proposed action, the logical next step, a specific recommendation, or even just a summary conclusion that points forward. This is absolutely critical because it prevents that terrible habit many spontaneous speakers have, just trailing off, ending with filler words like, so yay, or that's about it, and completely losing the impact right at the crucial final moment. The now what gives you a strong, clear finish line.
I can definitely see how having that defined three-step path, what, so what. Now, what would eliminate a lot of the verbal stalling, the ums and uhs, while you're trying to figure out where you're going next? It gives your brain a preset track to run on. But let me pose a challenge here, a common scenario. What if, in a truly spontaneous moment, I know the what the situation is clear and I have a good sense of the so what, why it matters, but I genuinely don't have a definitive now what? Maybe the situation is too new or requires more thought. Is it okay to apply this structure only partially? Does it demand a concluding action step?
That's a really important practical question, and Abrahams does address the inherent flexibility needed with these templates. The structure doesn't rigidly demand absolute certainty in the now what. What it demands is direction. It demands a clear sense of forward movement. So if you don't have a definitive action plan ready to announce, therefore we implement Plan X tomorrow, you still need to provide a conclusive thought that points the way forward.
Okay, so how might that sound?
Well, you can transition the now what into, say, a proposed next step for discussion, or a clear statement of the current uncertainty, but balanced immediately by the next steps for gathering the necessary data. For example, instead of saying, therefore, we must do X, you might say, so the now what here is that we need to convene the subcommittee immediately to analyze these implications. Or perhaps the immediate now what is that my team needs to spend the next 48 hours collecting data specifically on the regional impact before we can confidently propose a final decision.
Ah, okay, so you're still providing a concrete, actionable direction, let's discuss, or let's get data, even if the ultimate solution isn't known yet. It maintains that sense of control and forward progress.
Exactly. It still provides a clear path forward. The path might be information gathering or collaborative decision-making rather than immediate implementation, but it's a path that avoids the weak ending.
That preserves your authority, too. Okay, let's try to apply this in a really high-stakes corporate scenario. Imagine you are, let's say, the lead strategist for a major national retail chain, maybe headquartered in Dallas. You're in the quarterly board meeting, it's just started, and completely out of the blue, the CEO turns to you and demands an immediate analysis of a breaking news headline that just flashed up. A key competitor has just announced a massive, super aggressive expansion plan directly into your company's core markets.
Wow, okay. Total ambush moment, high pressure, everyone's watching. Cognitive friction is probably sky high. How does our Dallas-based strategist apply what's so what now, what instantly to sound composed and strategic.
Okay, deep breath, harness the energy,
Yeah.
right? Then structure. I'd start immediately with the what. Be precise. Okay. The immediate news is that competitor X has publicly committed $500 million to open approximately 50 new flagship stores across the Southeast region. Their timeline is aggressive over the next 18 months. Critically, this geographical footprint directly overlaps with about 70% of what we've identified as our own high-growth areas.
Okay, very precise, factual, defines the situation clearly. Now, the crucial so what? What's the gravity, the implication?
Right. The implication, the so what, is frankly significant. This planned expansion poses a direct and immediate threat not just to our overall market share projections, but specifically to our crucial Q3 and Q4 sales targets in key states like Florida and Georgia. There's a serious risk that we could lose first mover advantage in those contested territories if we don't formulate and execute a response with comparable speed and strategic intentionality.
Excellent. The relevance, the why we should care, is crystal clear and tied to specific business outcomes. Okay, finally, the now what. What's the immediate action or direction, even if the full counter strategy isn't formed yet?
Okay, the now what needs to be immediate and actionable. So I see it as twofold right now. First, I strongly recommend we convene a cross-functional emergency task force marketing, ops, finance, real estate this afternoon to begin modeling at least 3 distinct rapid response scenarios. We need options fast. Second, as a precautionary measure, I believe we must immediately institute a temporary freeze on all non-essential capital expenditures across the board until we have a clearer understanding of the full resource requirements needed for our counter strategy.
Wow. Okay, that is instantaneous, perfectly structured, and incredibly authoritative. You took a potentially chaos-inducing piece of breaking news and, using the framework, transformed it into a clear, strategic, actionable agenda in seconds. It makes the speaker sound completely prepared, totally in control, even though it was an ambush. This framework really is a lifeline for quick thinking under pressure.
Yeah, the power isn't just in the content of the words, is it? It's the underlying structure that supports the confident delivery when you're under that kind of pressure.
Precisely. It allows you to deliver high-impact, organized content without paying the huge mental energy tax of having to invent the format at the same time as the content. It frees up cognitive resources.
It's a game changer for sounding polished in a pinch. Absolutely. Okay, if you are finding these frameworks helpful, maybe thinking about how you could apply them in your own professional life, remember that structuring your thoughts is absolutely key to communicating your value effectively. So, before we move on to handling those really tough, high-stakes questions, please take just a moment to like, subscribe, and share for more updates. All right, so we've worked on stabilizing the mindset, harnessing that energy instead of fighting it. And we've got a foundational structure, like what so, what now, what, to organize our thoughts quickly. Now we need to graduate to the next level, which Chapter 5 tackles, handling tough questions. This feels like the advanced course, doesn't it? How do you navigate those really tricky situations, hostile Q&A sessions, adversarial interviews, maybe intense public scrutiny where the question itself feels like it's designed specifically to trip you up, to pull you onto unfavorable conversational ground?
Exactly. This is where we learn the critical skill of staying composed under fire and, more importantly, strategically controlling the narrative of the conversation. Abrams makes a crucial point here. You should never let the questioner, especially a hostile one, dictate your core message or the ground on which you choose to speak. The key is to acknowledge their query, yes, but then pivot deliberately back to your strongest, most positive, or most strategic ground. And the specific mechanism he details for achieving this is the sophisticated strategy known as acknowledge, bridge, communicate, or ABC.
ABC. Okay, this sounds like the tool that can transform what feels like a purely defensive posture, just reacting to attacks, into a proactive, powerful, strategic move. Let's dedicate some serious time to breaking this down because it feels like the nuance, especially in that middle bridge phase, is probably what separates a true professional communicator from someone who just gets flustered or sounds evasive.
You're absolutely right. The bridge is critical. But let's start with the first step. Acknowledge. This is vital. It needs to be brief, but intentional. It's about validation. You must show the questioner, and importantly the wider audience, that you actually heard the question and that you register the gravity, or at least the topic, of their concern.
Why is that acknowledgement so important? Why not just ignore the hostile part and jump straight to your message?
Because skipping the acknowledgement makes you look evasive. It makes you look dismissive, or worse, like you didn't understand or don't care about the issue raised. This instantly damages your credibility. The audience perceives you as defensive or slippery. So you use brief phrases that validate the issue or the topic, but importantly, not necessarily the negative premise or the accusation embedded within the question.
Okay, so examples might be.
Things like, that raises a significant point about resource allocation, or I appreciate you raising the complexity of that particular challenge, or even just, I understand why that's a concern for the community. See how you're acknowledging the subject of the question, too. Resources, complexity, community concern, without agreeing with any negative spin the questioner put on it. This brief acknowledgement diffuses some of the immediate tension and buys you a crucial moment of goodwill, maybe just a second or two, to prepare your pivot.
Got it. Acknowledge the topic, not the attack. Okay, then comes the crucial move, as you said, the bridge. This is the escape hatch, the pivot point. It's a transition phrase or sentence that's specifically designed to smoothly steer the conversation away from the hostile element or the uncomfortable ground the questioner tried to put you on and guide it back towards your key message, your preferred territory.
Exactly. And this requires having some pre-planned, rehearsed transition language ready to deploy. You need a few go-to bridging phrases in your mental toolkit. The goal is to make the transition feel as seamless and natural as possible. You want to avoid really blunt or hostile-sounding bridges like, well, I refuse to answer that hypothetical, or that's completely irrelevant. What's really important is, because those just sound combative and, again, evasive.
So what are some examples of more effective, smoother bridges?
Think about phrases that redirect the focus, gently but firmly. Things like, and that specific concern is actually one of the key reasons why our immediate focus remains squarely on X. Or, well, that's one perspective, perhaps the bigger picture that we really need to focus on today involves Y. Or even, before we get into the specifics of that detail, it might be helpful to remember the overarching principle here, which is Z. See how they acknowledge briefly, then smoothly shift the frame.
Yes, it's like saying, I hear you on A, but the more critical point right now is B. This deliberate shift is what grants the speaker control back, isn't it? If the questioner asks about a past failure, the bridge helps you move the conversation smoothly towards future strategy or lessons learned. If they try to zoom in on a minor, tangential, maybe embarrassing detail, the bridge allows you to pull back out to the core mission or the positive outcome.
Precisely. It's about reframing on your terms, and that leads directly to the final step. Communicate. Once you've successfully bridged, you don't hesitate. You confidently deliver your prepared, positive, or preferred message point. This is where you might even deploy a mini what so, what now, what structure to deliver a really high-impact, organized piece of content, the message that you wanted to talk about all along, the one that reinforces your key objectives.
The emotional turning point here must be immense, going from feeling trapped by a hostile question to feeling absolutely empowered. You realize that a tough question isn't necessarily a dead end or a trap. It can actually be a prompt. It's a launch pad. You're no longer just reacting defensively. You're strategically using the questioner's energy to advance your own agenda. That feels powerful.
It is incredibly empowering. Let's try to illustrate this with a really relevant, high-stakes, maybe slightly challenging modern scenario. Imagine the CEO of a major utility company, let's say based in California, where energy issues are always hot topics. They're facing a live, potentially televised town hall meeting regarding some recent controversial decisions about expanding energy infrastructure, maybe new power lines or a substation. A community activist stands up, microphone in hand, and asks a deeply challenging, emotionally charged question. Your company's recent land acquisition practices appear to consistently undervalue long-held, community-owned property. Why should we trust a corporation that clearly prioritizes profits over people?
Oof. Okay, that's a direct hit. It's emotional, profits over people, it's accusatory, undervalue, and it's designed to put the CEO immediately on the defensive, probably trying to justify complex appraisal processes. If they jump straight into defending the specifics of land valuation, they've already lost the narrative battle, haven't they?
They absolutely have. They'll get bogged down in details and sound defensive. So the ABC response needs to be very calculated and swift. First, they must acknowledge the emotion and the concern expressed, but critically, not the specific accusation of prioritizing profits over people. So the CEO might say something like, "Thank you for raising that. I hear your concern very clearly regarding the fairness and transparency of the land acquisition process, and I absolutely understand the deep emotional weight that's attached to property ownership within this community."
Okay, good. Respectful acknowledgement of the emotion and the core topic, fairness, process, without validating the profits over people frame. Now, the crucial bridge. They need to pivot smoothly away from that accusation and back towards the company's mandate, perhaps focusing on essential services or safety.
Exactly. A strong, mission-focused bridge could sound like this. And honestly, if we connect this directly to the bigger picture, the fundamental reason we're undertaking this specific, carefully planned land acquisition process right now is absolutely critical to our ability to provide reliable, safe power to everyone in this region. Our core mission, especially given the increasing frequency of extreme weather events we're seeing in California, has to be ensuring that our grid infrastructure can withstand these 2025 level climate challenges and prevent potentially catastrophic outages that affect us all.
Okay, that's a very effective bridge. It links the difficult action, land acquisition, directly to a much larger shared positive goal: reliability, safety, climate resilience. Perfect. And finally, the communicate phase. Deliver the positive, mission-driven message.
Right? So following the bridge, the CEO might conclude firmly. Therefore, our resources, our engineering focus, and indeed our primary intention are laser focused on enhancing grid safety and guaranteeing reliability for every single customer we serve. We are absolutely committed to working closely and respectfully with every affected landowner, which is precisely why we've actually tripled the size of our dedicated community liaison team this past quarter. That unwavering commitment to community safety and energy security is where our focus and our resources are firmly centered right now.
Wow. Okay, notice how skillfully that response addressed the underlying topic raised in the question: fairness, resources, community impact, but immediately and decisively shifted the entire frame of the conversation. The CEO pivoted away from the defensive ground of profits versus people and onto their strongest strategic ground: safety, reliability, climate preparedness. They successfully controlled the narrative and moved beyond the initial accusation. That is really sophisticated communication under fire.
And the key takeaway is that this kind of confidence, this ability to navigate treacherous questions, it isn't just innate charisma, it's structural. Knowing deeply that you have the ABC framework ready to deploy in your back pocket buys you those critical milliseconds. It gives you the mental space to formulate that powerful transition phrase and avoid just stumbling verbally or getting dragged into an argument you can't win.
These ABC strategies feel absolutely essential for anyone who might find themselves speaking spontaneously in the public eye, or even just in challenging internal meetings. Okay, we've now covered mindset, basic structure, and high-stakes defense. Logically, we now need to shift our focus towards connection, towards understanding the other side. But first, if you're appreciating these deep dives into the nuts and bolts of strategic communication, please help us reach more listeners who could benefit. Take a moment too, like, subscribe, and share for more updates. Okay, we spent a good amount of time talking about how to organize our own thoughts, how to control our output, how to defend our position. But Chapter 4, which is titled Listening to Lead, introduces what feels like a fascinating paradox, doesn't it? It suggests that the best spontaneous speakers, the ones who really connect and persuade, are often actually the best active listeners. This section really draws us into the art of connection, of responsive dialogue, not just monologue.
Yes, this is such a critical insight and perhaps one that's often overlooked, especially in our, hyper fast-paced 2025 leadership environment. Abrahams really flips the script here. He shifts the focus away from just internal preparedness, rehearsing your lines in your head, towards genuine external engagement. Many people fall into the trap, right? While the other person is talking, especially if it's a question or a challenge, they're frantically trying to formulate and rehearse their perfect answer in their head.
Guilty as charged sometimes, yeah.
We all do it. But Abrahams argues, quite compellingly, that truly active listening is actually the single most efficient way to prepare for an effective spontaneous response.
Okay, that sounds counterintuitive again. How does listening more intently actually speed up my ability to think and respond, especially when I feel like I'm under the gun, like I need to respond quickly?
It accelerates your response preparation, primarily by minimizing wasted cognitive energy. Think about it. If you jump in too quickly with an answer because you weren't fully listening, or if you're too busy rehearsing your own point instead of absorbing theirs, you often miss the crucial nuance. Or worse, you miss the true underlying concern or question beneath the surface words. You end up formulating a brilliant answer, but to the wrong problem.
Okay. So active listening prevents you from going down the wrong path in your response.
Precisely. Active listening, especially when employing specific techniques like confirming understanding and summarizing their point, ensures you are addressing the core issue, the thing that actually matters to the other person. By confirming, so if I understand correctly, you're saying X, you eliminate ambiguity up front. Yeah. By summarizing, okay, so the main challenge seems to be Y. You force the speaker to either validate your understanding, yes, exactly, or correct you Well, actually, it's more about Z. This process achieves razor-sharp clarity about the real input. And that clarity focuses your subsequent spontaneous response like a laser beam. It saves you all the mental energy you would have otherwise spent correcting course mid-sentence or realizing halfway through your answer that you misunderstood.
Okay, let's talk about some of those specific techniques Abraham suggests for truly active listening, because it's clearly more than just nodding your head and waiting for your turn to talk. What are some of the verbal cues or actions that actually build that trust and help focus the conversation effectively?
Well, one of the most powerful techniques discussed is often called reflective listening, or sometimes mirroring. It goes beyond just summarizing the facts they stated. When the person finishes speaking, you try to reflect back the core emotion or the underlying intent that you perceived in their message.
So, not just, you said the deadline is Tuesday, but something more like.
Exactly. More like. Okay, it sounds like you're feeling quite overwhelmed by the sheer scope of this project right now, and perhaps the looming deadline is causing a significant amount of stress. Or maybe. So if I'm hearing the frustration in your voice correctly, it seems the main issue isn't the task itself, but the lack of clear communication around the expectations.
Wow, okay. That immediately signals a much deeper level of understanding, doesn't it? You're sure you heard not just the words, but the feeling or the implication behind the words. I can see how that would instantly build connection and make the other person feel genuinely heard, and probably reduce the tension in the room dramatically.
And reducing tension is paramount for you, the spontaneous speaker. Remember our discussion about mindset. If the overall communication environment feels calmer, less adversarial, your prefrontal cortex is far less likely to slip into that threat interpretation mode. You'll have better access to your higher cognitive functions. This allows you to deploy those structures we talked about, like what, so, what, now, what, or even ABC, with much greater ease and effectiveness. In that sense, active listening is actually the ultimate de-escalation tool. It ensures that your well-structured, high-speed response actually lands effectively because the other person feels understood and is therefore more receptive.
Let's try to contextualize this within, say, modern workplace collaboration challenges. Thinking about leading those increasingly common decentralized or hybrid teams in 2025. Suppose you're a project lead, maybe at a big pharmaceutical company based in Boston. During a video call, a key team member who's working remotely from a different time zone gives some spontaneous feedback. They sound a bit hesitant and say something like, look, I'm really struggling to get buy-in from the regional partners on this new clinical trial protocol we're rolling out.
Okay. Now, a typical, maybe slightly reactive leader who's already focusing only on their next words or jumping to solutions might immediately respond with something purely administrative. Okay, did you send them the full documentation packet? Let's check the shared calendar for their availability. They've completely missed the potential hidden question or the deeper issue.
Right. They're solving the surface problem, communication logistics, but maybe not the real one. So how would the spontaneous speaker who listens to lead handle that differently? They'd pause first, right? And maybe use a confirming or reflective technique.
Exactly. They'd pause for just a beat, showing they're processing, not just reacting. Then they might respond with something like, okay, thanks for flagging that.
Yeah.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like the protocol documentation itself is clear enough, but you feel that the regional partners might be resistant more to the change itself rather than the specific content of the new protocol. Is it possible the difficulty here is actually more about navigating adoption hurdles and maybe some cultural resistance rather than just a simple documentation or scheduling issue?
Oh, that's brilliant. By using that kind of reflective confirmation, probing the why behind the struggle, you instantly help diagnose the true problem. Maybe it is really about change management resistance, not just a failure to communicate the facts. And therefore, your subsequent spontaneous response, perhaps a suggestion for identifying local change champions within those regional teams, or maybe tailoring the communication approach differently for that specific culture, is going to be incredibly focused and far, far more effective than just suggesting another email blast.
Precisely. It fundamentally transforms the interaction. It shifts it from being a performance where you, the leader, are expected to instantly deliver the right answer into more of a partnership where you collaboratively define the real problem first. And the emotional reward here is profound both ways. You reduce the cognitive burden and frustration for your listener because they feel truly understood. And critically, you conserve your own precious mental energy because you're not wasting it crafting a response to the wrong issue. You're focusing your spontaneous speaking power where it will actually make a difference.
It really feels like when you listen that deeply, you're essentially pre-editing your own spontaneous speech in real time.
Mm.
You're stripping away all the irrelevant noise, all the potential wrong turns, and honing right in on the one response pathway that actually matters in that moment. You genuinely lead by listening first.
That's the core idea. The ultimate confidence in spontaneous speaking, perhaps paradoxically, comes not just from knowing what you want to say, but from having the deep assurance that you truly understand the input, the context, and the real needs of the person you're speaking with.
Mastering that art of active listening really does feel like the hidden backbone supporting quick, effective, and truly connective spontaneous speaking. Okay, if you're thinking about how to refine your own listening skills to become a better communicator overall, remember these techniques are learnable. And as always, if you want to continue exploring ways to enhance your communication impact, please remember to like, subscribe, and share for more update. Hmm. All right, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've navigated through the essential pillars of Matt Abraham's framework in Think Faster, Talk Smarter. We started with the absolute foundation of mindset, that crucial shift from anxiety to excitement. Then we built on that with practical structure, using tools like what so, what now, what for clarity. We tackled high pressure situations with the ABC technique for handling tough questions. And just now, we explored the vital connecting role of deep listening. But as Abrahams emphasizes strongly in Chapter 7, none of this becomes truly second nature, truly automatic, overnight does it. Poise isn't magic, it's explicitly built through intentional practice.
Absolutely. Chapter 7, Practice Makes Poised, really drives home the point that transforming these conceptual tools and frameworks into automatic, instinctual responses requires consistent, deliberate effort. We're talking about building micro habits. This could mean doing daily drills, maybe practicing the what so, what now, what structure silently in your head about mundane topics during your commute. Or perhaps deliberately engaging in low-stakes improv exercises, even just with friends or family, specifically to increase your cognitive flexibility and comfort with thinking on your feet.
It's that consistent repetition, isn't it? That's what takes the initial cognitive effort required to consciously recall and apply these structures, like remembering the steps of ABC under pressure and gradually lowers that effort down to near zero. It transforms that conscious, sometimes clumsy calculation into an instant, almost unconscious, fluent response. That feels like the real difference between someone who knows the framework and someone who embodies it when the pressure actually hits.
Precisely. And that leads us perfectly into the synthesis presented in Chapter 8, which is aptly titled Bringing It All Together. This chapter really highlights the triumphant integration of all these skills. The truly successful, confident, spontaneous communicator, Abrahams argues, is the one who can seamlessly weave together all these learned elements in real time. The calm, harnessed energy stemming from the right mindset, the immediate organizing capacity provided by structure, the responsive focus and connection fueled by deep listening, and crucially, adding that layer of resonance provided by effective storytelling, even on the fly, which is a core theme from Chapter 6 that we haven't dived into today but is worth noting.
Yes, that inclusion of Chapter 6's core theme, the power of narrative, of story, feels vital, even if we didn't cover it in depth. Because even in a brief, spontaneous moment, being able to quickly weave in a tiny, relevant anecdote, or maybe just a brief personal example or metaphor, ensures that your organized, clear message doesn't just get understood, but actually sticks in the listener's memory. Clarity without some resonance, without that human connection, is often quickly forgotten, isn't it?
That's exactly right. Clarity gets you heard, but connection and story get you remembered and often get you buy-in. So the final triumph, the real culmination of working through this entire deep dive and applying these principles, is that feeling of realizing you are now genuinely equipped. You're equipped to navigate the unpredictable, fast-paced professional world we live in. You feel prepared for the unexpected curveball. You have the tools to speak with clarity, with integrity, and hopefully with heart in literally almost any situation, from that impromptu elevator pitch to the crucial boardroom clarification to the challenging town hall question.
Abrahams really does provide a practical roadmap for thriving, maybe even excelling in this digital age of, say, 2025 and beyond, where literally every unexpected comment, every off-the-cuff remark could potentially be instantly recorded, clipped, and scrutinized online. In that environment, the ability to speak spontaneously, but always with structure, with mindfulness, and with clear intention, feels less like a nice-to-have skill and more like an essential component of career security and leadership presence.
And perhaps, if we want to connect this to the bigger picture, just as a final thought for our listeners to chew on, it raises a really important question. In a world where, as you said, every conversation can potentially be instantly recorded and shared globally, how does adopting these kinds of spontaneous speaking structures, the mindset control, the WSWNW, the ABC, the active listening. How does mastering these skills not just protect your professional reputation from accidental missteps, but actually serve to proactively elevate your personal brand? How does it position you as someone who consistently speaks with thoughtful intention, with clarity, and with integrity, even under pressure?
That is definitely the new standard of professional communication we should all be striving for. That's a fantastic question to leave us with. Thank you so much for guiding us through these incredibly practical, actionable insights today. It's been really illuminating.
It's been my pleasure. It's always rewarding to dig into material that offers such tangible, immediate benefits for anyone looking to improve their communication impact.
And a huge thank you to you for joining us for this deep dive into transforming panic into poise, silence into impact. We genuinely hope you feel more ready now to think faster, talk smarter, and confidently seize every single unexpected communication opportunity that comes your way. Until next time.